Well, everyone, my name is AJ Wilcox. I run b2linked.com. We're an ad agency that literally LinkedIn ads is all we do. Obviously a huge fan of LinkedIn. And I'm super excited to be with Sarah Wise today, who is a great friend. And she is the author of Instabrain, which is the predominant, you can hold up the copy. Yes. Okay. So this is the predominant book for learning about how Gen Z interacts with social media and how they're purchasing, which is obviously going to be really important for you. If it's not already, it will be in the coming years. Sarah, like I said, longtime friend. We speak at a lot of the same conferences, and we actually got together in person before the COVID thing happened. We got a chance to do a lot of like original research, interviewing students, members of the Gen Z community live. And I am so excited to be here today. Sarah, take us away. Tell us about the study and kind of lead us into the discussion.
So I think the study started because as I was going to conferences and I was presenting about all the social media that Gen Z uses, there was always a question after the conference like, hey, I noticed you didn't talk about LinkedIn. Why didn't you talk about LinkedIn? And I would always say things like, well, it's because it just didn't come up when we were talking to Gen Z. I mean, we did almost 2 years of research on Gen Z before I started speaking about it. And I mean, it was all sorts of research, qualitative research and quantitative research and in-home ethnography pre-COVID, where we would actually go into people's homes and hang out with teenagers. I literally spent 1.5 years hanging out with teenagers. And I mean, that was fun. And what's interesting was that the topic of LinkedIn never came up. And most of these interviews were fairly open-ended, like, show me how you use technology. How are you using technology to do your homework today? Walk me through it. Or like, what are you researching right now? Like, oh, you're into guitar and you're into rock music. Like, tell me about that and show me what you're doing and how you're doing that. Oh, you're into this video game? Tell me about it. How, where do you go to find information on this? And watching them switch between devices and between social media apps and diving deep into topics and things like that. But LinkedIn never came up. And even with the kind of older Gen Zs who are now entering the workforce, they would say things like, oh, I'm looking for a job. And we'd be like, oh, show me how you do that. And they would go to Indeed, or they would go to other places, or some of them were using LinkedIn, but it was with like surgical precision. So they would go in there and they would be like, yep, I'm going to search for a job. Okay, I found something. Okay, I'm getting out now. And it was like as fast as they could get out of LinkedIn, they were doing that. And so when we got together, AJ, I think I approached you because I was like, okay, I don't get this. People keep asking about it. I need to have an answer. Let's figure out what's going on.
And I forgot to mention that you are the CEO of a market research company. So just to be very clear here, it was definitely you who approached me, because it never came on my radar to think, hey, I should go and do an original study. Like, it's definitely not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it originated because we were doing market research on Gen Z for big companies like Google and some large banks and things like that. And what happened was that we started asking the question too, like, how do your new employees like find you? Where are you putting your job posts up and seeing the most Gen Z applicants? And we were starting to ask those questions, and LinkedIn was just not coming up that often. And so anyway, so we started digging into it and we started doing our own research. And what we found was really interesting. It was really surprising, because what we found is that over 50% of Gen Zs across the country, they have a LinkedIn account. I mean, most colleges and universities, I would say older Gen Zs, like 18 and up, they have a LinkedIn account. And it's in large part because most universities, as a part of like career class or a requirement for some sort of career services, tell their students, you need to download LinkedIn, you need to create an account. And so they have been asked to create an account, in some cases required to create a LinkedIn account. And so over 50% have a LinkedIn account, but only something like 4% were using it. Yeah. I think it was 96% of the people we talked with. And these were Gen Zs across the country in the older Gen Z age range. So from about 18 years old to 24 years old. So really like in college, getting their first job, applying for those entry-level jobs. they were saying this is not something we use.
And what I loved is when we were in person, we were actually interviewing students on the campus of University of Utah. And I think we interviewed like 12 or 13 people before finally someone said, oh yeah, I have LinkedIn. And we're like, oh good. Like show us how you use it. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, I created an account one time. I can't even figure out my password. So it was like those who have it, they're certainly at least not yet not using it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because this is a group that first of all, this is like the largest living generation right now. It's a big deal type of group, especially for any sort of digital platform that wants to be, a digital platform 5 years from now. They need to be marketing to and meeting the needs of this younger generation. And especially for LinkedIn, which is a platform that enables people to find jobs, this is a generation that is entering the workforce now. And for some reason, there is a breakdown between what LinkedIn offers and the perception of that in the minds of Gen Z. And so I almost, will say that I think Gen Z is failing or that LinkedIn is failing its Gen Z customers because it's not giving them the information they need, maybe the tools they need, the features they need, and telling them about them and educating them on it. Because the Gen Zs we talked to, they didn't even see LinkedIn as a social media platform. It was the same as Indeed. It was the same exact thing as anywhere else that they would look for jobs.
Yeah. And on top of that, we talked to several students who were actively looking for a job. And so we asked them like, hey, how are you looking? Would you consider LinkedIn? And they had this reaction to it like, oh, well, the kinds of jobs I'm looking for aren't there, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, and some of the jobs were like internships, like, oh, I need a professional internship. And we were like, oh my gosh, that kind of stuff is on LinkedIn. Like, of course, we couldn't say this because we were conducting like very third-party neutral interviews. But in our minds, we were like, interesting.
AJ,
thanks for the feedback.
AJ was telling himself like, namaste, just keep calm. Don't
AJ,
show facial expressions.
Expert in all things LinkedIn, yes.
It was very sad. So yeah, tell us more about like what are the findings? What really surprised you as you were going through this research?
I think what surprised me the most is that they don't see this they don't see LinkedIn as a social media site. Like it is not in their heads anywhere close to what an Instagram is or even a Facebook is. Like they know, like they're not using Facebook as much as say an older demographics, but they certainly understand that Facebook is a social media platform. They're just not seeing LinkedIn as a social media platform, and they're definitely not seeing it as something that they would use.
Yeah. And this is so surprising to me because LinkedIn stopped being a job search platform to me back in like 2012. And it's been a actual social media for communicating ever since then. So it seems like LinkedIn is either not branding themselves or not reaching Gen Z with the proper messaging so they even know what the platform is and why they would want to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially because we were asking questions too about like, oh, do you ever like go to the news feed? Do you ever look at articles in your field, or do you ever communicate with people? Do you try to establish connection with that hiring manager? I mean, they tell you who the hiring manager is. So are you trying to connect with them and start conversations with them in any sort of way? And they just had no idea that that was even a possibility. Yeah.
So I think, do you have any more insights you want to share, or should we start going into like the prescriptive stuff? Like,
let's dig into it. But because I think the biggest finding here is that LinkedIn is not working for this generation. So I want to hear from you, AJ, LinkedIn expert. Like, what features would be really helpful to this generation who is looking for jobs? And I guess I should add too that especially now that we're in COVID, we're months into this, it is really hard for a young person, an older Gen Z who's just out of college to find an entry-level job. Like, it is extremely difficult because those entry-level jobs, they're being filled by people who are overqualified for them. They're being filled by people with many years of experience who are accepting a lower salary and taking that job because unemployment is high. I mean, it's a really strange time because we went from this kind of one of the largest economic booms in history to just crash, bang, people are unemployed, don't have jobs, like record levels of unemployment. People are just taking whatever they can find. And that made it so much harder all of a sudden to find jobs. And so I would have assumed that because of that, a young Gen Z who is extremely digitally savvy would be like, oh, let me hop on LinkedIn and see what there is to offer. And we're just not seeing that.
Yeah. And first of all, Gen Z, I totally feel for you. I graduated in 2008 and I came out going, yes, can't wait to attack the world and go get a massive salary. And then I found every single company was on hiring freeze due to the big economic downturn.
I love that you're talking to Gen Z like they're on LinkedIn. Like,
sorry,
you're going to be posting this on LinkedIn. and you're, I think that's the thing. If you are watching this on LinkedIn right now, you're probably not Gen Z.
Yeah. Or if you are, you're one of the only ones and you should be very proud. But that's true. I totally
you're ahead
understand.
Of your game.
Yeah. And I absolutely understand the what they're going through right now because it was tough. I mean, I had a year of digital marketing experience when I first graduated, and it took me 3 months to find a job for like $14 an hour.
And if you look at the numbers of Gen Zs right now who are moving back in with their parents, it is just off the charts, astronomical, especially even if they're still in college or they've extended their college because they're like, I can't find a job right now, so I'm going to go for another semester and see what happens.
Go take that karate class.
Especially because it's all virtual now. And I think a lot of them are also helping their parents out with their parents' jobs and things that are going on with their parents' lives too. That's
awesome. That just strikes me as actually really, really intelligent. It might be like just necessity is the mother of invention, but I'm like, yeah, if I had a Gen Z son or daughter who was getting ready to enter the workforce, that's exactly like the hustle I'd want to see from them. Just figure out anything you can.
It is a hustle. I mean, I interviewed one Gen Zer recently who said that he had moved. He actually was in LA trying to start his career and then had moved back home to New Jersey to help out his parents' power washing company and was doing a ton of just manual labor power washing because that's what his family needed.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good for those people. I know I'm not talking to you because you're not here, but good for you.
He's never going to see this because it's not on LinkedIn. Yeah. But if we posted it on Instagram, he'd probably.
Oh, totally. Yeah, let's repost. It's just in little 30-second snippets.
Snackable content. That's what we call it.
Yes. Well, break down only the most valuable stuff, which is obviously all of it. So we can kind of get prescriptive here. We can talk about the things that we think Gen Z could do, which obviously we're not talking to you, Gen Z, but maybe parents of Gen Z are watching. These are the things that you can help your children understand and kind of give them a boost into the workforce. So I think the first thing that I would point out that I think is the biggest no-brainer about it is if you have a son or daughter who is looking for a job right now in a really competitive environment and they're not on LinkedIn, the ability to go viral on LinkedIn organically right now is insane. It's basically what happens is anytime someone hits like, comment, or share on your post, it then goes to a portion of their followers. And so the more people that are liking and engaging, the more people LinkedIn starts showing it to that aren't even in your network. So
that's so big because being an influencer is the be all end all for many in this generation. That is the goal, to get their ideas and their brand, because they really do think of themselves as an online brand, to get that out into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think that they understand how easy it is to be a thought leader and organically grow on LinkedIn.
And that's my point really for this is you think about the kinds of thought leaders who are bubbling to the top on LinkedIn. I mean, there's 30 I could name off who are HR experts. There are 50 who are sales experts who are just sharing stuff and trying to become well-known. I don't know any Gen Zers who are talking about the experiences they're having, being authentic. I mean, for a generation who totally understands the value of becoming an influencer, the landscape here is totally ripe for someone of this generation to come in and run it on LinkedIn. And I think
I will say though, it's a lot different than the social media that they have right now, because a lot of them are maybe doing YouTube videos or on Instagram, or even doing TikTok, little 15-second TikTok things, and that's happening on video. And LinkedIn's platform is just not set up for video. I mean, even doing this interview alone, we had so many tech difficulties getting Restream to work and getting like LinkedIn's video platform to play nice with the LinkedIn Live on an interview with two videos connecting, like to the point where we're just like, screw it, let's do this on a Zoom video and we'll post it afterwards, which defeats the whole purpose of LinkedIn Live. And I also think that LinkedIn needs to take some responsibility here and say our features are not set up for the types of video sharing that Gen Z wants to do, that they are accustomed to doing on other platforms.
Oh, yeah. And the way that video works on LinkedIn, if you don't already know, you can attach video to it. So we could upload this as a native video, which I'll probably do if it's less than 30 minutes. I think that's the limit for uploading video. For going live, they don't have there's not a native ability to just like hit it and go live. You have to use a third party, which means you're looping in all of these other technology issues, which is why we are not doing this live right now. So it adds a lot of complexity to it, where this is a generation who is they're used to just hold up your phone, start recording yourself.
I mean, and we even tell when we do market research for companies, when we're doing product research for companies, we will even tell them, if Gen Z can see your technology or notices your technology, you're doing something wrong. Because it needs to be invisible. Like, it needs to feel completely seamless. Like, oh yeah, I just pushed a button and yeah, of course that worked. So this whole let's connect through a third party thing, and I have to figure that out. I need accounts. So I have a phone call with somebody at Restream. They don't hop on the phone. So, I mean, just all of this contributes to like not a great experience for this generation.
Yeah. And no knock on Restream, because I actually love Restream, but the fact that we have to
I think Restream is great. I mean, I think the reason that it didn't work for us is because you've got like a computer, a DSLR hooked up, wires connecting, and there was some sort of delay with the video and audio. So I don't think this is a knock on Restream at all. I think this is a knock on LinkedIn not natively offering the ability to just like plug and play, like put a Zoom conversation or do some sort of thing. Like, I almost feel like they should have a studio in LinkedIn's platform. You can put two people in there and have a conversation like we're having right now and do it live. Like, why are we doing this on Zoom and Restream and linked, like even just to get it into LinkedIn Live?
And the same solution that they could create that's just two people talking, they could create a Zoom competitor where it's like, hey, don't even log into Zoom. Have all of your meetings on LinkedIn with your colleagues. Like, it seems like maybe missed opportunity here.
Yeah, and that's a perfect platform to do it on, because people are on LinkedIn for work. It's not like they're on Facebook all day, like while they're working. You're trying to close that Facebook as much as they can, or Instagram or anything else for especially for older people. Like, LinkedIn is the professional network that I think most people over 25 use, or just people in general use for professional reasons.
Yeah, totally. And so if you are the parent of a Gen Z who's looking to go into the workforce, maybe you can help convince. I know Gen Z may not want to be convinced of this, but you can help convince them, like, yeah, the video stuff is harder, but because no one is doing it, there's a huge opportunity for you to cut through the clutter and become an influencer quicker and be comfortable with text. Like, be comfortable sharing text and pictures as well until video gets comfortable with where you're at.
I think one of the other findings that that we saw that kind of surprised me. I mean, I guess once I thought about it, it was not surprising at all, but it was the fact that one of the reasons that Gen Z struggles with LinkedIn is that they go on LinkedIn, they see all these thought leaders, they see these people with great resumes because they've got 20 years in the industry or whatever it is, and they're like, oh, my resume doesn't look like that. Like my summer internship where I got coffee for people, or I was a checkout person at a grocery store, or I was a camp counselor. Like they're not seeing their experience as relevant to their resume. And that's in large part because of how they think of social media accounts. So they do think of, you know that like most Gen Zs have 5 or 6 Instagram accounts, for example. And we call them Finstas and Rinstas. And a lot of people think that they're fake Instagrams and real Instagrams, but they're not. They're actually, like, they're all real, legitimate accounts. They're just for different slices of their personality. And they're curating these little pockets, these little brands for themselves within each account. So if you're a Gen Zer and you're into photography, you might have a photography account where you just follow photography people and post photography things. And you might also be into like a YouTube celebrity. So you're going to have a fan account for them. And then you're going to have your normal account, your like school account where all your friends go. And then you're going to have like a separate account called your spam account, where like it's just for your close friends, where you can be a little more real, because none of these are fully real. It's all just like little like curated slivers of themselves. And so when you translate that to a job, they're going, oh, I want to get a job in marketing, or I want to get a job in HR, or I want to get a job in this field, whatever the field is. And they're saying none of my past experience tells that curated story to get me that job. And they're not seeing the connection between, hey, the fact that I was a camp counselor actually taught me a lot of teamwork and planning and project management, because I had to coordinate with other counselors and I had to plan activities for the kids and I had to do this and I had to do that and it taught me responsibility. And like they're not seeing the connections between what those early jobs actually teach them and how that is actually very relevant to a future career and an entry-level position. I mean, if I see an entry-level person who has had a job as a grocery store checkout, I know that they have good people skills. I know that they have good customer service skills. I know that they could basically make small talk with anybody, and that they listen and they take directions. And like, you know, just a lot about them based on an entry-level job, even if it is not applicable to the job that they're applying for, but they don't see it that way. And
they can make change.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Mental math, sure. Maybe. I don't know with all the cash registers that just give it for you now. But yeah, I mean, I think that we also have to do a better job as, you know, as parents and as parents who are listening to this and talking to your Gen Z kids about, you know, when they put their resume on LinkedIn, or even if you're a school and listening to this and saying, what am I going to teach to these students in this career class? One of the things is, please list everything. It is relevant. And the fact that they can distill, if they can say, I learned teamwork skills because I did this, this, and this at that job, that's even better. And also, like, I wish that they could do some sort of video resume or something instead.
Oh, yeah. Again,
back to the video, because Gen Zs will talk about themselves and their goals and what they want to find in a job very quickly on video. Writing is another whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you can read a resume written out of emojis, like Gen Z is going to do great.
I don't know.
Yeah, writing skills probably not quite there yet, but I don't know. I learned how to spell a word right last week, so we can all still keep learning.
We're all doing that.
So if you've got a Gen Zer, you can help them. I mean, you can help them understand, first of all, like, hey, being an influencer is possible on LinkedIn. No one else is doing it, and here's how you have to do it on LinkedIn. So I know this is a little bit less comfortable for you in the rest of the social media you use, but it's writing things and sharing things and leveraging video that may not work quite as smoothly. You can help them with that. That's fantastic.
Transcribing the video on otter.ai and then putting it out there.
Yes. And then help them understand, help them think through past experience. If they look at LinkedIn and go, man, all these other people have like CEO of this and 18 years of experience in that, I'm not worthy with my grocery store checkout profile. Help them understand, like, point towards the skills that were built and not necessarily what they think of, like, oh, the job title of ice cream scooper. Like, sorry, I'm not worthy. You are worthy. Figure out the skills that make you interesting, especially to those who are hiring for the entry-level positions.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of kind of partnerships that I see for LinkedIn with colleges and universities, because these colleges and universities are already telling their kids, hey, you are required to, or you should create a LinkedIn account. And they're doing it. I mean, the numbers show that they're doing it because they're being asked to do it. So why isn't there subsequent education that says, okay, now that you have an account, this is how you do it? And it's almost on LinkedIn too. Like, LinkedIn should know, based on the profile, how old the person is, like the personalized profile. They should know to show a video on how to customize your profile instead of just walking them through like the little checklist of you're 80% complete or whatever it is. Like, they should actually do a video series, maybe on LinkedIn Learning or something like that, that's free to anybody who has just recently opened, is in a certain age range, looking for an entry-level position, and has recently opened an account, to follow up and actually get that going.
Yeah. And maybe even
they should even go, I'll let you talk too.
I was going to say, maybe even consider like some kinds of suggestions where if someone puts like common titles like grocery store clerk or babysitting, it might pop up recommendations and say other people who have this experience have phrased it like this and have used these points from skills they've learned. So, maybe even consider some of those. If it's not a video, maybe it's dynamic pop-ups.
Yeah. And also the email is one thing we found in just years of a couple of years of Gen Z research, is that email marketing is not dead for this generation. I mean, a lot of people think that this generation, they assume that this generation doesn't check the email, but they are actively checking email. So an email campaign from LinkedIn to people in this generation would work, like where it's like, hey, here's your, for the next week, every day, we're going to give you like a 5-minute task to do on your LinkedIn profile to make it better. That would work.
and make sure to appeal to their egos, because every child of this generation has been told that they are made of gold.
They're special.
Yeah, you're totally special. Yeah. I love it. And I love the idea of the college partnerships. I mean, for LinkedIn to go into junior colleges or state universities and work to make sure that not half of all students end up leaving with a profile, but 100% have them. They have a presence on campus. They have events they've put on together and sponsored together to help educate people, like not only create an account, but this is how you can use it. I think would just, it's not going to reflect on next quarter's stock results, but it will, like 4 or 5 years from now, I'm sure it'll do massive things.
Yeah. And imagine if you started your LinkedIn profile and like started recording the project you worked on and everything when you were 20 instead of when you starting when you're 30 or 35. I mean, just imagine that, like how much more like meatier your profile would be.
Yeah. And when I was searching for a job in the middle of a recession, no one was hiring. I was ashamed, and I didn't want to talk or share anything about it because I thought like it was a reflection on me as a failure. But especially with this generation who has watched influencers, they understand the value of being authentic. And maybe it's a Finsta, but at least they see that there's value in showing your authentic self. Someone who goes through and starts like cataloging and showing what their experience is of like, hey, I'm job searching like this. Oh man, I guarantee you would find a job so fast when people are seeing the hustle that you're putting in and your control over media.
Yes. And the documentation of it and stuff like that. If I saw somebody who could really do that and was hustling like that, I would immediately think, wow, they will hustle for my company if I hire them.
Absolutely. And that's what you want. Like, that's the only thing I'm looking when I hire for someone. I just want to see drive. if you are driven and hungry, I can teach you anything about LinkedIn ads.
And this generation is hungry to begin with. I mean, remember that unlike millennials who grew up in a boom, this generation grew up in a recession. These are post 9/11 kids. I mean, they grew up in a time of war and recession, and they are hungry for work to begin with. I mean, these are kids that with millennials, they were like, oh, I'll take a year off and explore Europe and backpack and find myself. And we're not seeing that in Gen Z. Like, this is a generation who is entrepreneurial. 61% want to start their own businesses when they come out of high school. And it's amazing to me. And they're, in addition to that, they're valuing traditional education, and they understand, okay, I want to start my own business, but I have a lot to learn to do that, which is a really interesting finding, that they're entrepreneurial but value traditional education as well. It's not the tradition. It's not that entrepreneur, that millennial entrepreneur, like, forget this college. I'm just going to drop out and I'm pretty smart, so I'll make it.
Yeah.
Other entrepreneurs have done it. I mean,
well, and I don't know, is there is there like something we pin on this generation that feels negative? Like, do we talk about Gen Z like they are, because I'm on the elder side of being a millennial, but I very much side with millennials. And I was afraid to admit I was a millennial for years, because everything I read was millennials are lazy and entitled, and
and they eat too much avocado toast, and they can't buy a house. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, there's all of that too. And I'm with you, AJ. I'm a few years older than you. When you said when you graduated, I was like, I'm quite a bit older. But yeah, I'm in this actually a micro generation between, we talked about this micro generation between millennials and Gen X, where we didn't grow up with high-speed internet in our homes. So we actually behave more similarly to Gen X than we do to millennials. And it's kind of an interesting microgeneration. And I wonder if there's going to be some sort of microgeneration here now that's like the COVID generation or something like that. I mean, they call that microgeneration the Oregon Trail generation, because they're the kids that like grew up with the big floppy disks where you're like sharing a computer at school with like 3-4 other kids, and you're like walking across the country and dying of dysentery. Shooting squirrels, all
I ran out of ammo again. No.
Oh no. Somebody stole my horse, an oxen.
I loved Oregon Trail. Man.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wonder if there's going to be a similar microgeneration here of like the the young adults who were trying to find a job during COVID.
Yeah. Oh, I totally think there will be. This is, I am so glad, just as an aside, I'm so glad that I was alive for COVID, because if you would have told me like 10 years later or 10 years earlier, like there's this thing that we lived through and the whole world stopped and everyone started wearing masks, like I would not believe you. So I'm glad we experienced this, and for people to have their formative years during it, I can't even imagine what that's.
Yeah, I'm interested too in how this is affecting Gen Alpha, which are the kids who are under 13, who today are for the first time like, I'm sorry, you can't be in school.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be in school. You have to homeschool, and we don't have a device for you, but figure it out, kids.
Yes. And depending on what year you were as an alpha, like I've got four alphas in my house, and there's a whole year that they pretty much took off of school. Like it wasn't the same curriculum. Like, are we going to have a whole generation where this year knows nothing about geography?
I think
year
we
doesn't
will.
Get math? Yeah.
I absolutely think we will. I mean, that happened to my daughter at the end of last year when we started homeschooling. I realized in the summer, because we did it like a math assessment for her, like, oh, these are the things you should have learned in 3rd grade. And she missed math, basically. All the things that you learn at the end of 3rd grade math, she just was really weak on them. And I was like, I was there. I was homeschooling you. I know you did this. I know you learned how to convert fractions, damn it. And yet, and yet she was really weak in it. And I think that there's going to be a really big gap too between kids who were at a public school where they had to be home for a whole year, and the kids who started back this year in private school. Like there's going to be a huge gap in terms of the kids who don't have, just missed a whole longer period of time than the kids who were in private schools and able to go back in person because they were small class sizes.
Oh, incredible. This will be so much fun to watch. I know we need to wrap up. We're out of time, but thank you so much for getting together, cooperating on this study together. This was amazing. I could not, and I would not have done it.
I will say all the research, we'll post a link to it, but it is posted on the BIXA research blog. So if you want to see the findings of the research, the major findings, it's all written out and kind of like in a story.
Yes,
for you with bullet point findings so that you can actually go ahead and get some of this data and use it. And, you know, if you're creating your own products too, I mean, even if you're in marketing somewhere else, it's super helpful to understand, you know, what we're critiquing LinkedIn for here related to Gen Z. And I bet there are some similarities with your company too.
Oh, yeah. And if you're listening to this on the LinkedIn Ads Show podcast, we'll put it in the show notes below, taking you right to bixaresearch.com. So, Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. This is amazing. I am in awe of the information that you so effortlessly throw out there every time we talk. So, thanks for that.
Let me give you a freebie too. Okay, so if you would like a free chapter of InstaBrain, you can go to bixaresearch.com. It'll be in the show notes or in the comments if this is being posted to LinkedIn. bixaresearch.com/free chapter. And you'll get a free chapter of InstaBrain, the new rules to marketing to Gen Z. And you'll also get a PDF of the top ways we do research for Gen Z. So if you're thinking about really getting to know this audience, which you should be, because it is the largest living generation right now, and they're entering the workforce, and they contribute to $655 billion a year in purchase power. So you should be thinking about them as your customers, as your employees everywhere. So
they will make you rich.
They will make you not go out of business. So if when you are ready to do research, this PDF will tell you the techniques that are really working for them right now.
Awesome. Thanks so much for running the study. This information was incredible. I know everyone listening, you're going to love the article, the in-depth research, the data behind it was Sarah was the mastermind and I was merely a contributor. So thank you so much.
Oh, he's not given himself enough credit for that.
I never do. Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. And thanks for everyone for watching/listening.
Okay, bye. Oh, are you a waiver? I recently read this. I recently read a study on people who wave versus not wave on Zoom calls at the end.
Really? So what's the difference? Like, what does it mean something about your personality?
Yeah. It's like some people are just totally over Zoom and they're like, goodbye. And then some people wave.
The last thing you see is a finger going towards the lens. Yeah.
So yeah, that was your little Easter egg at the end of your podcast, random waving. waving poll. Do you wave or do you not? You'll notice it about yourself next time you're on Zoom.
Party on. See ya.